Good morning, everybody. The Sinister Secret of the Saltmarsh is an expansion that has released and is out now, available for you to buy today. Now, I already have a copy, and I've played through it. Not once, not twice, but thrice. I've taken some time to play it, play some of the other content that is around it, to try to get a good idea as to actually how the content performs and how good or bad it actually is. And so today I bring to you my review of the Secrets of the Saltmarsh expansion. Important note that if you have not played this expansion yet, and you are still on the fence as to whether you should or should not buy it, and you're watching this video to kind of get a sense for it, I highly recommend you listen to this video instead of watching it. I am going to play Saltmarsh footage on the video, but there are a couple quests that I think that you should probably see first as a first time go through if you do end up buying it. So swap to another tab or just minimize it or what have you, flip your phone over. That may help you if you do end up buying it in the future. But with that, let's start with the good. Now, the Secret of the Saltmarsh gives you a tavern, an adventure zone, and 10 new quests. One of the first things that is an immediate standout is the music. The music in the Sinister Secret of the Saltmarsh is amazing. Now, you might think that it's not the most important part of an expansion, but for me, sound plays a lot into my general experience with a video game. Sound design, like sound effects or music, really helps me feel absorbed in the actual atmosphere of an adventure or a video game. There are some games that just always knock it out of the park when it comes to sound, and for me, one of those video games is Destiny 2. I find that the sounds of all the weapons, the music, the monsters, it sounds so good and it's very compelling, and it always makes me come back and feel so satisfied when I play the game. The Saltmarsh has phenomenal music to go along with this. It has an extremely Lord of the Rings-esque feel that goes along with it. You're heading out on the road with the sunset at your back as you're trekking off into the unknown in this semi-lawless land. The combat music as well complements it incredibly well, being both a solid juxtaposition to the very calming themes you generally hear, as well as having a lot of energy in some of the actual battles. So as far as the sound design, I love it. And on top of that, the actual landscape design. The wilderness area is very open and is not too cluttered with monsters. There are a lot of monsters, of course, it's an adventure zone. However, one of the benefits of it being not super cluttered is it makes it easy for you to mount up and ride where you want to go without hitting a red alert. They tried this new system where the monsters don't just aggro on the landscape, but instead are in these predetermined packs, which might make it worse from a slayer's perspective, but for an actual travel perspective, you only have to engage the monsters if you actually want to. The visual quality is fantastic, and some of the new monsters that they've introduced just look phenomenal. The crocodiles look a lot like crocodiles. The animations, some of their cool attacks. I especially love the spin move that they have. And standing in a pile of bullywugs both looks and sounds amazing. The bullywugs have a whole suite of custom attacks and animations, and I really hope we do get to play one as a race someday, because I'd still like that and I'm still pushing for that. Now, beyond looking pretty and sounding pretty, the next one we have to talk about is the actual gameplay. How good are the quests? Now, I recently did on my live stream a review of all of the quests in DDO and put them into a tier list, which will be showing up on this channel soon. However, trying to compare it to other adventures, it made me think a lot about how the quests compare. There are some standout quests in this expansion. The Haunting of Saltmarsh is easily my favorite quest, and I think you will like it a lot as well. The narrative direction, the storytelling, the way a lot of characters end up interacting with you, the different personalities that you see all over the place. It's very easy to find yourself getting immersed in this lawless land full of smugglers and ne'er-do-wells. With the story able to suck you in on many of these quests, you have to ask yourself, do the actual quests themselves follow up and do a good job of being entertaining physically with the actual combat? And the answer to that case is, yeah, it does. Now, the way that I was thinking about the quests at first is, are these the best quests that they've ever designed? I think that some of them are extremely good. However, there are some quests that are really hard to be beat. The entire Castle of Ravenloft from the Mists of Ravenloft expansion was this amazing exploration project the first few times I went through. Make Believe from Feywild has incredibly funny dialogue, so many different characters, and many different ways to actually progress through the objectives. Both of these adventures, one being long and one being short, kind of fit to me as some of the best designed quests we've seen in Dungeons & Dragons Online, just from a general perspective. Saltmarsh, it has a couple of these really good quests, but on the flip side, you also have to look at the bad quests. Sharn, as an expansion, has quite a few. Many people really don't like Best Laid Plans. Many people really don't like Just Business. Many people really don't like some of the Ravenloft quests, like Mad Tea Party or Amber Temple. And I myself really don't like the Feywild quest Witch Hunt. Every expansion just so happens to have a quest I don't think everyone is going to get along with. Except Saltmarsh. I think that all the quests in Saltmarsh are at the very least good, which is good. I can't think of any of the quests that I actually dread doing again. The quests can be very long, and each quest will run you 30 minutes to 45 minutes on your first run through if you actually take the time to go through, read all the dialogue, open all the doors, look through all the different chests, find all the secret passageways, do all the optionals. You'll have a good time running through them, as I said, about half an hour to 45 minutes per adventure. However, once you've learned how to do all these quests, you've had your fun, you've read the stories and learned about the characters, each quest can get done in no more than 10 minutes, and oftentimes 5 minutes or less. Every single quest is packed with so many interesting optionals and side characters that it really makes you want to explore the entirety of each quest, and then once you've done that, you can just get back to your regular route of speedrunning each individual adventure. Every single quest contained within the Saltmarsh I would classify as being above average in terms of the general quest design, and some of them do a fantastic job. And this makes me want to put Saltmarsh at close to the top on average of some of the quests contained within a single pack in terms of how well together and how cohesively they are. Now, when talking about the heroics, I think they did a good job with the heroics in general, because one of the things that they did do is they didn't make it too hard. I always harp on Standing Stone Games for making the heroic content in anything that is new too difficult, and here I don't think that they did. I managed to solo my way through every single quest in the Saltmarsh on a level 5 rogue that was a First Life character, with only one single death in the entire time that I played through. It was First Life, and I only used the items that I was able to pick up while actually playing the character, and while it did take me some time, of course I was going through every quest as slowly and meticulously as possible, it only would have taken me about an hour and a half to go through the whole thing if I was going as quickly as I could. The balance in terms of general difficulty in lower levels feels about right. When it comes to the epics, I will say the epics are a little bit harder than some of the other epics. It's definitely a little bit harder than Sharn, Feywild, and Ravenloft in terms of the actual monster difficulty, just with slightly higher saves, but I did 2 comparison runs. First, I ran this at Epic Elite on one of my characters, and then following that up, with that same character, I ran it on Reaper 7. In Reaper 7, I found that with my mass hold of a DC of 92, I was able to land it about 60% of the time on monsters, some monsters like Bullywugs who had low will saves almost 100% of the time, whereas some monsters that had higher saving throws, like depending on the type of human monster, a little bit less often than that. In general, it didn't seem terribly difficult, especially with a pretty standard group, a tank, a healer, I was crowd control, and we had some DPS. But I can definitely see from a solo perspective, you may still have some trouble with the Epic Elite version. Not only that, some of the monsters are a little bit overtuned. Specifically, there's a adventure where there's a undead rat that is a boss and will ruin your entire day if you're not prepared for it. However, even with the increase in difficulty, you can slam your way through the Saltmarsh 10 pack of quests with the group in about an hour, hour and 20 minutes, somewhere in that time frame. And for the 10 quests, pick yourself up a ton of loot and a lot of Reaper experience if you're playing it on Reaper mode. Now, I myself have talked about this, and I've seen a lot of other people complain about the experience. And this is where we're going to start talking about some of the things I think are a little bit lacking in this expansion, although it's not a very long list. In general, I think that all of the quests in the Saltmarsh give a little bit too little experience. The epics I think is mostly fine, since the saga gives a massive reward and it's not that long, but I think that the heroic is a little bit underexperienced. I would like to see a buff on pretty much every quest in the Saltmarsh by about 5%, and for the longer adventures, specifically Danger at Dunwater and the Final Enemy, those 2 quests are quite long. I would love to see their XP go up by 10, maybe even 15%, not a huge buff, but really with the amount of time that you spend in there, it does take quite a long time. On my First Life character, I just barely got 1 single level from winning all of the quests, so that means on your Third Life character with no potions, you won't get a level from running all 10 Saltmarsh quests, which makes me think maybe there could be a small XP buff. Of course, there still is the saga, and you have to include that, but the quests are generally harder than others of their level, and when you can run a quest like Waterworks, which has been in the game for a long time, at twice the speed and get more XP, you have to ask yourself, why are you going to go out and do some of these adventures? Now granted, I'm not really comparing apples to apples, and I'm not saying that the quest isn't worth it. If you happen to have a fast group, or just the ability to deal with a few monsters at a time with some AoE, you will slam through Saltmarsh, and the XP is quite good. But at the low levels, you might not have access to that and might have a lot of single target, and single target often leads to a situation where you're not able to deal with the monsters effectively, and the quests take quite a long time. The items dropping at level 3 is great because it means you can use them right away when you get started, and a lot of the items are really good. However, there are some people that did not like the fact that the legendary versions of the quest were also dropping level 3 items, since you can't feed them to your weapons for sentient XP. However, this has been rectified with the patch, and now item XP tokens are dropping, and you can take them and shove them into your sentient weapon for that juicy item XP, and you don't have to worry about getting level 3 items all the time. My understanding is that the drops are fairly common, so it shouldn't be too hard to collect. Additionally, the Saltmarsh items are very easy to upgrade, given that the Salt Meadow Hay, the crafting material, drops in the heroic and the epic version of the quests, and you also get Salt Meadow Hay from every single optional chest. This was an inspired decision and something I'm really happy that they did, because it means that every single time you actually play, you want to convince yourself to go do an optional to get a little bit of that extra Salt Meadow Hay to upgrade your items. Additionally, it means that all the stuff that you got in Heroics level 3 while playing through it, you're able to then upgrade to level 20 once you get there, and then possibly even upgrade again, going to level 30 after playing the expansion 1 or 2 times. I really like this. I like the fact that the Heroic gives you the ingredients. I haven't really talked about my feelings on the Scroll Seal Shard system update that's happened since update 50. I will talk about that in a bit, but it's very disappointing to me that in that system, the heroic quests don't drop their actual crafting material, which means that you have to wait until you get to epics, but then the epic quests are actually too hard to even do in some cases because they're really overtuned, so then it's actually very difficult for you to upgrade the materials. So then I asked why was the work put in the first place, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I am talking about is that I think it's a really good decision that you can get it in this case, and I'm really hoping that they decide to take the Saltmarsh system where you can get the heroic items and then get them in the other quests instead. The Saltmarsh items are difficult to fit into many gear sets simply because gear sets are already pretty well established and we have a lot of good items. It will take some time for people to figure out which ones they're actually looking forward to. However, I can say for a fact that there's a lot of really good items in here, stuff that you want to consider slotting into your gear set. General specifics, we have some new shields for vanguards that are looking pretty good. A lot of the artifacts, especially for the endgame, look quite exciting. And for heroics, there's a whole set of 5 pieces that gives you a bunch of defensive stats and also that are just generally useful. At the end of the day, I think the items are very good in terms of filling up slots, and if you're out there without owning the Feywild or Sharn or other things, you can still make a good item build with what you've got here, which I think is essential. Having self-contained items is important for general item sets. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about with regards to the Saltmarsh is the special weapons. Now, as you might know, every single expansion has come with a whole host of really cool looking weapons. They get an individual unique stat block put on them, and they have a cool look. Ravenloft has the Barovian weapons, Sharn has the Serenian weapons, Feywild has the Ferrocrystal weapons, and Saltmarsh has the Flame Salt weapons. However, it's a kind of a bummer. One of the things that I really was hoping for was to be able to pick up a Flame Salt weapon on my character that I actually ran through the Saltmarsh with. However, it doesn't look like the Saltmarsh weapons actually drop in any of the chests, which means the only way you're going to get one is by turning in the chits. Now, I could be wrong about this. I've heard some people say they drop in chests, but I've ran 3 full sagas and I haven't seen a single weapon drop, so I don't think that they do. However, I'm willing to be wrong, but if they do actually drop, and 3 full sagas not seeing a single weapon, that's kinda bad. Additionally, to get one if you want to buy it, instead you can use the Quartermaster's Chits. It's a way to deterministically get the actual item that you want, which I appreciate. However, after running 3 full sagas, I got a total of 11 Chits, with 3 of those being the heroic, and 8 being the epic version. It costs 5 chits to get an item, so 2 full saga clears should be an expectation if you actually want to get yourself a Flame Salt weapon. This is, in my opinion, too much work for something that doesn't seem to drop in chests, and also for items that pale in comparison to the power levels of the Ferrocrystal weapons, which are both easier to get because ferrocrystals drop from every single chest that you loot in the Feywild, and pretty much one saga run will get you an item no matter what, as well as you pulling 2 or 3 of them as you're actually just doing all the quests. I don't want to compare apples to apples, but I really think that the flame salt weapons need to have their drop rate increased, or at least actually put them in the quests, or increase the drop rate of the quartermaster's chits. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't see anybody using flame salt weapons at any point in the future because they seem very difficult to get. Sure, if you're farming out the Saltmarsh multiple times, you'll be able to buy a weapon or 2. I bought one on the live stream just so I could show off what the Great Club would actually look like, since Great Clubs tend to be good looking weapons. But I used all of my chits just to see what the cosmetic would look like. So, given that there's a lot of different items on this list, I have a feeling that we won't be seeing flame salt weapons showing up in people's inventories anytime soon. So now this comes to the closing end of the review. How do I feel about it? What is my final verdict of the Saltmarsh? Overall, in my opinion, I think that Saltmarsh is the second best expansion in terms of general content and all of the things that come with it. The things that we didn't get was a whole brand new system like sentient weapons or artifacts, but it is a mini expansion. It's also half the price of the other expansions that brought those other things, this expansion running $19.99 versus the $40 of a Ravenloft or a Sharn, so you'd expect more out of those expansions. We did not get a raid, but every single adventure that happens to be in this area is very, very well done. The quests are fun and interesting, the story is interesting, and a lot of the items are going to find a very healthy and happy place in people's item builds. The update to the crafting systems that came around were also very good. And something I forgot to mention during my general talking in this video is that there's actually some type of secret puzzle. While playing in the legendary Saltmarsh, you can get an item called a Nebula Fragment, and by turning it into Lahar, you're able to get a special frame. There are currently people working on figuring out exactly what this is for, and if I can figure it out, maybe I'll post a follow-up video explaining to you in detail how to get it and what to do to get your final item, if that is something that people are interested in, or whatever actually comes out of this. I don't even know. But having some type of secret show up is very cool, and combining that with the visual aesthetic, the quests, and everything else, in my opinion, this puts Saltmarsh as the second best expansion for me personally. So if I was recommending an expansion, for me Feywild is probably my favorite one, and then it is the Saltmarsh, with Ravenloft coming just underneath the Saltmarsh. This might come as a shock to some of you. I like Ravenloft, I think it's fun. I think the Strahd raid is one of the best raids we've ever gotten, and I really like the Ravenloft as a whole. However, the music gets grating after a long time. I really don't like the washed out colors. I'm not the biggest fan of dealing with a lot of undead in a lot of my quests, and several of the quests such as Mad Tea Party and Wrath of Earth I could do without. In fact, pretty much all the quests at the end of Ravenloft I could do without at this point. Especially after the adjustments to Flame Strike, oh man does it sometimes get irritating to run through Ravenloft. In conclusion, if you're excited for the Saltmarsh or you're on the fence, my opinion is that it's something that I would definitely look into investing into. It's a fun bit of content, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to be playing Saltmarsh pretty much twice every single life, once in Heroic and once in Legendary. The content is fun, the quests are neat, and I can't wait to play through some more with some different builds to see how it actually goes around. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video here. If you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe to get more of that Strimtom content and other videos I upload. As well, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/Strimtom to get all of the different video content and perspectives that you need and live discoveries as we go through content as I see it on stream. But with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. I'm going to chug a beer. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.